Most of you will know me, but those that don't, Grant Buchanan's my name, and I'm one of the leaders in the church. Actually, if you were at church here last week, you'd have seen me as part of the play. It's sort of my entrance into an acting career, but I had 7 lines that I had to do, and I was Barabbas in the play. But anyway, they were looking around for people to do the parts. I mean, Jesus had to be acted by someone, and it wasn't me. And the person who did it did a great job and was far more worthy. But, the thing is with, there's Barnabas and there's Barabbas, right? Now, Barnabas wasn't really in the Easter story at all, but he was a great apostle and a great encourager. And I really didn't have a problem with being asked to do Barabbas, except for the fact that when Sheena asked me, she sort of had that look on her face that I had all the characteristics that would do the part really well. So, I've got over it. But anyway, one problem I only had 7 lines, and you could kind of think you wouldn't botch up 7 lines ordinarily, except that was my prison over there, and I was meant to have a seat behind it, and I came out on the stage and the seat wasn't there, and it completely threw me, and I forgot half my lines. None of you would have really known. Someone said, a kind person said, Grant would have never known. But the person who was the prompt, Janice Comfort, knew full well, and she said, really, you did ad-lib. Why would you need to ad-lib when you only had 7 lines? Anyway, I don't think I'm going to be asked to do it again, so anyway. Look, I just thought that this morning, actually I was preparing for this yesterday, and I was finding it a bit of a struggle, actually, and Shelley, I sort of told Shelley what it was about, and it's a bit nerve-wracking, I'd imagine, if you're the spouse of the person going to speak, because you don't want them to be an idiot, I mean, you don't want them. And she sort of was kind of quite relaxed, but I told her what I was going to do, and she said, well, why don't you give it a title? And I wasn't really worried about the title, but she gave me one anyway, and I think it's a good one, and it's this: A Cry for More. A Cry for More. And in actual fact, Ross White's prophetic word is very much like what I believe the Holy Spirit would want to say to us as a people this morning: a cry for more. Go up higher or go deeper, as Ross was saying. Anyway, what I want to do is I want to just start with 2 stories. And normally if you hear that, you think, oh, nice, because that'll be interesting, encouraging. Unfortunately, my 2 stories are not encouraging. And I hope I get asked to preach again, but these stories are not encouraging. And this was the first story. I go to a small group in this church, and I have been doing so for about 7 years. And there was a man in our small group who had come to the small group over a period of time in the last 3 years, and he was quite regular, but then he was a bit up and down at times because he did suffer from depression. And then he actually went into respite care at the beginning of the year, and we were really busy. Shelley and I were really busy getting small groups off the ground, and in the back of my mind I was thinking, oh, do I need to visit him? And I just parked it and didn't do it. Anyway, the incredibly sad thing is this man took his life. So that actually was very, very discouraging. Another thing that happened is last Friday, I don't know if you're like me, all of you look better than me. I mean, I can see you all. You look better than me. Anyway, this is the thing that I do on Fridays. When it turns 5 o'clock on Friday, I'm always smiling. I can't help it, Anyway, no exception this last week. I came out the door, went out the door of my office, and I bumped into someone. Hadn't seen them for quite a while. And this person, once again, had been in our small group, had come for about the last sort of 3 years, and I hadn't seen them recently. In fact, I was just saying to Shelley a couple of weeks ago, gosh, I wonder how she's getting on. Anyway, we started talking about what was happening in the small group and embracing the neglected, and, this is what you could do, And she said, oh, hasn't anyone told you? I said, what? Oh, I'm not going to the Baptist church anymore. I thought, oh, where are you going? I'm going to the Mormon church. And I got baptized 2 weeks ago. So it wasn't a very encouraging story. I thought, oh no. Don't worry, the message will improve as we go along. But, I mean, I was quite discouraged by that. I was very discouraged by it. And, what I started to do is I started to think, oh, what if her husband died of a terminal illness last year, and we journeyed with her quite closely. Then he was buried, and then I kind of, you have doubts. Oh, what if I'd done this? What if I'd done that? What if I'd visited a bit more, la-di-da, just gradually feeling worse and worse. Anyway, as I was sitting and being reflective on it, one thought that came into my mind is these two people had kind of been in our church probably for the last 2 years. And I just thought to myself that church is a place, should be a place, where people meet God in a way that transforms them. And I was just thinking to myself about our church, because we've actually got a good church. There's good teaching in our church. There's good worship in our church. There's a good youth group in our church. Everything's good. There was a good Sunday school in our church, and there's a good small group leader. I mean, Shelley leads it. It's very good. And, it's all good. But then I asked myself the question, how much do we see encounters with God that profoundly are altering people's lives? How much do we see it? And I'm not saying that we don't have a measure of it, but I'm saying it's not, in my opinion, what I have a reference point for. The reference point that I have for it is, I was a hippie. People laughed at me when I said that in the last service. Thank you for loving me. I was a hippie. I had long hair and a beard, and now I've only got eyebrows. And I didn't smell as a hippie. I didn't smell. Well, I thought I didn't smell. Because you know what? If you smell, you don't know that you do. This is a bit irrelevant, but this is actually a point. Because Shelley actually got to know me in latter years, and when she got to know me a bit closer, she actually gave me some deodorant, and I didn't take it personally, but obviously I was a hippie, right? Totally non-Christian background, and we're talking about the 70s.